Good evening, Ultimate Frisbee Universe, and welcome to a very special game day edition of Live with Lep. It is the final weekend of the regular season in the Ultimate Frisbee Association. And while we know who the 12 playoff teams are going to be, there's still a lot to be settled tonight and certainly in the coming weeks. We're getting you set for the start of the New York DC game. That's coming up at 6 o'clock. That coverage will actually begin 10 minutes prior at 5:50 Eastern Time. And of course, later tonight, we'll be talking a lot about the big South Division battle between Carolina and Atlanta. Winner gets the top seed in the South, hosts the division championship game. Loser has to play the Austin Soul next week. We certainly saw what Austin did last year, so I think both those teams would love to just get the win tonight and then not have to worry about the Soul until perhaps the division championship game. But before we talk about what's coming up, let's talk about what transpired in the league last night. There were 3 games on the schedule, but 2 had massive implications. Out west, the Salt Lake Shred took a big lead on the Seattle Cascades and then narrowly hung on for a 2-goal win. So Seattle will be the 2 seed, assuming they can take care of business against Portland. The Salt Lake Shred are the regular season champs out west. We'll talk to the head coach of the Salt Lake Shred, Coach Merrill, in just a little bit. But first, we're going to be joined by the head coach of the 2 seed in the Central Division, Tim DeBile, the longest tenured coach in the UFA. Tim, thanks for joining us. Congrats on your massive 9-goal win over the Indy AlleyCats last night. You had just lost to the AlleyCats on the road by 1 a few weeks earlier. What was the biggest difference last night?
Energy. We had a huge crowd. We did make some adjustments. We've added a couple players back in: Kai DiLorenzo, KPS, Brian Hart, who were injured. All those guys returned in that Chicago game, and there was just this massive jolt of energy for us. And the team just has responded really well to getting all those guys back. A lot more confidence, I think, on the field.
I know you told me before the game that your life as a coach has gotten more difficult as you have more than 20 good players. And I know there was a point in time where a veteran who's been on the team for over a decade, Kelston Alexander, was maybe not in the top 20. He got in there and he had a great game. What was the story of Kelston's night?
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, it was tough. Like, the coaching staff and I talked for half the day on Wednesday and came to a conclusion. And we posted the roster to the team, and I went to bed and I couldn't sleep all night, and I woke up and it just didn't feel right. And I made a couple phone calls and switched Kelston back in. And he led us in plus minus last night with, I think, +7. So yeah, I feel like if I did anything well as a coach, I made that decision correctly. Probably the wrong decision to have him not play, but from us, we'd played our best game against Chicago, and he was gone. Like, he was out for that game. And so it was really hard to be like, oh, we just won by 10 against Chicago and played the best defensive game we played in years. We should definitely make some changes. So, and the person that he replaced, the 21, was Jack Kelly, who's been one of our best players, on the team for the last few years. So it's been an interesting year as far as like trying to figure out the right grouping of players. And just it's tough to have a problem of like so many guys who could play every week, for sure. As it is actually tough as a coach, but obviously that's you know there's lots of teams who would love to have that problem right now, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And it was, you never plan to start a game by getting broken before you have a single completion like your team did yesterday. And yet that old prime line gets sent out there and Kelson takes the shot. It connects. And it felt like from there, everything was clicking. What was the energy like at Breeze last night?
Oh, it was huge. I mean, it's been 5 years. It's very emotional, honestly. It's been five, we haven't been back to the playoffs since 2018. So we had 1,600 fans in there, and, every player was there and very active on the sidelines. And I think we all have been pushing to get back in the playoffs for so long that, it was very emotional, and like it was exciting, and we were, did everything we could to get that win. And like, I think you could see in that game, if you watched it, that like our energy just got higher and higher as the game went on.
That's awesome. It's a really interesting mix of players on this year's team because you got guys that have never sniffed the playoffs before, And then you have all these veterans. We talk about Kelson and KPS and Josh Wilson, who's been on the team since the beginning, Brian Hart, Andrew Mechanic as well. How do you kind of balance Pat Schreiwise too? How have you kind of balanced like the new blood with the old guard and get everyone on the same page to get back to the playoffs after what's been a pretty tough half decade for the Radicals?
Yeah, I think it was challenging. I mean, I think it's taken a few years to get those rookies up, those younger guys up to the level of play. But I think also we also got some of the older guys to kind of raise their level up too. I mean, like Kelson has been playing incredible, getting KPS back. J-Dub's having a great season again. Mesh. I mean, Pat has the last 3 or 4 games, Pat has been great. I mean, Brian Hart tried to play last year, had that ankle injury. He turned his ankle against Chicago that first game, and it looked like he wouldn't play again this season. And suddenly showed up practice and was, okay, I'm good to go for that Chicago game because he knew we needed him. And but yeah, it's a really interesting mix. Like there's so many good players, Pierre and Robert, Gabe, Max Sample, Gumby, who have just really stepped up. Like it's really unique. It feels a lot like that first team where we had that same thing where Mesh and Brian Hart and KPS were these kids who were like 19 and 20, and you had Andrew Brown and Jaden Scullion, Nate Volkman. We had some 40-year-olds and some, 19-year-olds on the same team working together. So yeah, it's been really fun, and like the team right now is playing hot. Like last couple of games, I think I think I mentioned this in the pre-call the other day, just that if we pushed this week, we would get above 40% for the season for break percentage, which we're at 41.9 because last night we broke 55% of the time or something, and we're the first team to do that since the 2016 Radicals did it. Modern era, the 40% break mark is pretty tough to do these days because offenses have just gotten a lot better in the UFA. So I was really proud of like us doing that against really good teams, because I think early on this season narrative was like, oh, we played Detroit a few times, so of course their defense is good, and then I think 4 of the last 5 games we've been over 50% break rate, which is you're going to win a lot of games if you're scoring more often than the other team's offenses when you pull. So I just really proud of like the defense is really that's that merger of like people like Sterling and Mesh and Kelson and J-Dub with all these young guys like Mitchell and Pirin and Joe. There's just so many guys on the team that are playing well right now.
I'm glad you steered the conversation to your break rate, because we're watching a video right now of the best teams defensively statistically in the history of the league. The 2014 and 2015 Toronto Rush, the 2016 and 2024 Madison Radicals. Are you surprised by what your team's been able to do defensively?
No, I don't think so. I think that we had all the pieces, and we were just missing some of the details, and we weren't making the in-game adjustments that we used to. And I think like one thing I want to just shout out to is that we hired Ben GM from Atlanta Hustle this year, and he took over the O-line from me, who I'm like not a great offensive coach, and I'll fully admit that. I prefer the defensive side. I always have, and that really freed me up to work with Jake and KPS like how we used to. And Ben has done a great job kind of just taking over the O and running with it, and it's given us like I think just more ability to pay attention to detail. And I think our attention to detail has gotten a lot better, and our overall like players able to like adjust to the game plans. And I thought we had a really good game plan for Indy's offense last night, and it really was a very good game plan, and Jake had a big part of that, and KPS, and it felt like we had them on lockdown. And that felt like our old days where we would come into a game and we tell the players what they need to do, and the players would understand everything we're saying and could execute on it. So yeah, I think right now our defense is carrying the team, but our offense has also steadily gotten a lot better. We kind of got Kai. I mean, Kai Marcus obviously had that first turnover you were mentioning, but after that, he played really solid game. We put him in a lot of difficult spots. I think a lot of people look at the stats and they're easy. Oh, Kai Marcus, he's your problem. It's like, well, he throws every end of quarter. He throws, every time with the roller pull, we put him in spots that are difficult. And he usually gets us out of that spot. And, sometimes he might throw a few more hucks than we want him to, but I mean, I think overall, we know that if we're going to be a really good team, he's going to be a big part of it.
I'm glad you mentioned the end of quarters. It has been an Achilles heel for the Radicals at times this year and in recent seasons. The first two quarters yesterday did not go well. It felt like watching from my living room that you should have been up big at half. Instead, it was a 3-goal game because they got the two end of quarters and it was 10-7. Cam Brock had the buzzer beater right before half. But things turned around in the third quarter. What was the message at halftime, and how did the break train get rolling in the third quarter to take care of business and really put it out of reach?
I mean, we got to thank Pierre and Robert. I think 4 or 5 weeks ago, he kind of told us that our third quarters were terrible. And he was right. I mean, we were all talking about it, and he's like, well, we should just do our warm-ups at halftimes together, as opposed to the Radicals always had a very like, hey, at halftime, everyone go do their own thing. We'll get back together a couple minutes beforehand. We'll set the tone, and then that's it. And like, you have your time to yourself. And he said, hey, like this isn't working for us. Let's all get together, stay together at halftime, do a little warm up on the field, make sure we don't get disconnected. And I feel like that's really helped a lot. And our third quarters have gotten a lot better. And yeah, I think we came out and we were just ready to play. And I don't know how many breaks we had that quarter, but I think it was 10-7, and then it was 20-10. So, it must have been like a 10-3 run, which you just don't really see in the modern UFA anymore too often. Like that was a very good offensive team coming into that game. And I felt like our defense just played so great. And again, I think, key is also that our offense needs to let our defense get on the field, right? If our offense is constantly getting broken, then our D-line doesn't get to play. So, kudos to the O-line, who I think played a pretty clean second half of the game as well, and let our defense stay on the field whenever they got an opportunity to play.
Tim, I'm going to let you go after this. We're going to chat with Bryce Merrill, the head coach of the Salt Lake Shred, here momentarily. What's the one key to getting the Radicals to Utah and winning the Central and advancing a championship weekend these next few weeks?
If our offense can play, 60% conversion, top 10 in the league, we're a very scary team, because our defense is, I think, just playing at a level that most teams are going to have a hard time scoring against us on a regular basis. So if our offense can just play, a little bit cleaner, like it has the last couple of weeks, I think we're going to be a hard out for a lot of teams this season yet.
All righty. Tim DeBile, thanks so much. Congrats on the win last night. Tremendous night at Breeze. Looking forward to watching next weekend when you host Chicago in the first round of the playoffs. Good luck, and thanks again. And we're getting ready for the final Saturday night of the regular season in the UFA. We're going to hopefully chat with Jack Williams live from Trinity Health Stadium as he prepares for DC and New York. Also looking forward to chatting with both Mike Dardis and Tuba Benson-Jaa, the coaches of Carolina and Atlanta, respectively, as we continue over the course of the next half hour. But right now, I want to welcome in the head coach of the regular season champs in the West Division, Bryce Merrill. Bryce, looks like a beautiful day in the mountains. Thanks for joining us. How are you feeling after the perhaps closer than it should have been victory last night over the Seattle Cascades?
Honestly, we feel great. I think our locker room at the end, whether we had finished 12-0 and won by 100 every game, or if we had had the up and down sort of experience we've had this season, we're where we would have ended up in either of those scenarios. And so I think a lot of it was just celebrating where we were at, having that sort of regular season behind us and playoffs to go. So honestly, big picture, we're thrilled. I think there was plenty of opportunities for being distracted or being, maybe focused on things we couldn't control, some of our injuries and last minute roster changes. But the guys came out, we played ball, and honestly just thrilled with the effort, even when things were not going well for moments in the third and fourth. Just a lot of fight, and that's something that I think has eluded us a little bit this year. So from a process perspective, we couldn't be happier with last night. Happy to get the win, even if it got a little bit close there in the fourth.
It did get a little bit close in the fourth, and I may return to that in a moment, but I want to talk about the first quarter and how you were down 2-1, and then all of a sudden you were up 9-3. Watching on my TV at home, I thought your defense just played with tremendous intensity, aggressiveness, going right up to the line of physicality, perhaps without crossing it, and just kind of really set the tone. Was that your message, or was that one of your defensive leaders' message going into the game against a Seattle team that really hadn't been in that type of moment before?
I think we the last few weeks have sought to return a lot of the credit and onus of our season's performance to the players. And so that's been a big push for us, that we want them to feel like they need to go out and perform. It's not our sets, it's not our X's and O's, it's our players. And our sort of our swing line, led by two of our captains, Nathan Huff and Grant Lindsley, they have taken that on their shoulders, and they're playing, 30% of their points on offense. They're playing a lot of defense, and I don't know what we'll do sort of moving forward from here, but it's player ownership. And they took that to heart with the way that they were protecting the disc. We went 9 for 12 on break chances possession last night. That's elite. If they're getting 75% of the time that they get that disc, they're scoring it. That's where we want to be. They're able to run. We were great on our huck percentages. We were great in red zone, and that's them owning that. That's not coming from the sidelines. It's not us barking at them to, run the red zone different. It's just them knowing what they need to do if we want to have good results from here on out. So big credit to our leaders. A lot of guys, Simon Dastrup, Matt Rusnagel playing really well. Even guys like Sean Canole and Ben Field, we have moved them around on a lot of different lines this season. And they're there to play ball. They step up, they play the role that we're offering them, and they make the most of it. And so I couldn't be more thrilled with the individual efforts, specifically on the defensive side of the disc, to set the tone for last night.
Yeah, it was fascinating watching who was on the field for certain O points and D points and thinking, I don't think the Shred have had a line like this in franchise history with, players shuffling around, but it was fascinating. You mentioned the great start. You mentioned the D line going 9 for 12. The offense went 9 for 21. It was a struggle to the finish line. What was the feeling on the sideline as the Cascades kept creeping closer after you led by as many as 7?
That happened to us in both of our Portland games. Obviously, on the big stage, it happened against New York. And this one felt different. Again, we saw more fight from our O-line as they are sort of doing the work between the ears right now. A lot of this is confidence. It's sort of mental. It's just the mental side of the game. Can they sort of push through when things aren't flowing smoothly? And I loved how much fight we showed on the defensive side. We had a weird situation with a whistle restart. And so we ended up throwing it away in the red zone. And, I think we were looking for a foul in the stack, and those don't come very often. And, I feel like our O-line of the last few weeks would have gone shoulders shrugged and head down, and they would have walked on to a transition goal. Instead, Elijah Jaime gets back. He makes a great play on a deep shot, and then we're able to work it after that. And that's the kind of fight that we're looking for from them right now. I would love it if it were pretty and easy offense every time, but I would prefer that we are working through some of our issues right now with a lot of grit. And that's what I'm seeing from that group. And so, again, very proud on the process of them fighting back and showing that they can get that disc back.
Watching from afar, it felt like a pretty awesome atmosphere at Zions Bank Stadium. Were the Shred Heads a factor in the game last night?
Oh, it felt so good. Earlier this season, we had DC out, and we were hoping for a banging stadium. It ended up being like a sleety, snowy type. And, we didn't get that raucous crowd. Same thing, one of our other home games, we had an hour rain delay back and forth. This felt like a long time coming all season, where we get the stands very packed, and the fans were rowdy. I think the fans know we need them right now, why we're working through this. And so to just have that, booming sound in the stadium, backing our defense, cheering on our offense, it makes, like, as a coach, it makes a very real strategic difference. And, knowing that we did enough work last night for however many games we earn the rest of the season, they're all going to be in front of the Shred Heads, is like a huge boon for us. And so obviously we hope to earn more games than less, but whatever we get, they're going to be with us. And I mean, strategically, it makes a huge difference.
Another guy that makes a huge difference is Will Selfridge, who you got back on the field for the first time since May. How do he look to you?
He looked great. I know he had a couple of throws he wants back. We're just not concerned about that, though. We've really been working on our handler motion and reestablishing pace of play, and Will, that's his default. And so for him to be able to step in, Luke Jorgensen is out with a broken toe from the Portland game. We don't know when he'll get him back, and Will can sort of step in as a hybrid role and immediately sort of impact the game in a way that creates motion for us, was clutch. And so we had him on pretty limited points, but the impact he made in his points out there was just awesome. It's such a boon for the team. We lost Joe Merrill for the year last week. We lost Luke for a few weeks now. Kyle Weinberg, another one of our emotional leaders, was out. with the illness for the weekend. And I think we needed some other guys to step up. And that's what you saw. You saw that from Benfield. You saw that from Alex Forsberg, and then obviously from Will as well.
Good deal. What's the plan for the next few weeks as you get ready to host the West Championship game in mid-August, 2 weeks before you host championship weekend?
We'll worry about champ weekend if we get there, if we earn it. I think right now we need to go back and review our game plan against Seattle and Oakland. And we're going to, spend this week doing a little bit of R&R and sort of getting the bodies right. And then we'll look to watch that game and figure out who we're planning for. But those are two talented teams that we have no interest in looking past. And so we just want to be ready for what they're going to bring to us here at Zions Bank Stadium.
Awesome. Got two more quick questions for you, Bryce. The Shred won the game. There's no doubt about that. But it felt like Lucas Ambrose might have been the player of the game. What was it like watching him? And maybe it was aggravating, but could you appreciate the impact he made in the game for the Cascades?
You took the word right out of my mouth. You appreciate performances like that. And he's a gamer. And I think that's what I love. I love that he is so confident, and it's like contagious. And it makes our guys play better when there is someone on the other side of the disc playing that well and sort of creating such a gravity on the field for his teammates. It makes our guys step up. And so I love the chance to go up against guys, and I could list off 3 or 4 other guys from the Cascades that are playing at that level. When Leaf gets in that handler set, Garmar and Lofink, they had a number of guys that were playing really well and just creating opportunities. But Ambrose's catch to end the third was something else. Him disrupting our end of quarter opportunity I think it was the end of the second quarter. It's just those plays that he doesn't take off ever, and he just makes such an impact. So very special player, annoying as an opposing coach, but just very impressed with what he does and appreciate what he's doing at such a young age, last year for LA and this year for Seattle.
Last thing before I let you go, Bryce, you're one of the few coaches in the league that has played against DC and New York this year. We're getting ready to watch that game at the top of the hour with massive implications for East Division seeding. What's it like preparing for those two teams? And do you care to make a prediction on who wins tonight in Connecticut?
I look at the DC offense and the New York defense, and it's a battle of titans. I think we got some gifts from DC that they have since cleaned up when we played them back in April. That was a lifetime ago. And New York's defense is definitely on a war path right now. They look pretty incredible. So I really like the matchup. I think I'm going with DC to win a nail biter, though. I think they're going to put on a show.
All righty. We'll see about that. We're going to be joined by Jack Williams momentarily. Jack, Bryce, we'll let you go. Thanks so much for your time. And we'll give Jack a chance to respond, but really appreciate it and look forward to seeing you in a few weeks as the season progresses. Best of luck going forward, Bryce.
Appreciate y'all. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. All right. And we're transitioning from the West Coast to the East Coast. Jack Williams, kind enough to join us. Jack, it looks a little overcast. Set the scene for us from Hartford, Connecticut right now.
Yeah, we timed this up nice. We just got kicked off the field for a little lightning delay. Looked like it was going to miss us, but the clouds are looking scary right now. So it might be ushered into the locker room at some point, but we're safe, right?
Cool. You've played a lot of big games against DC through the years. You've won most of them. The most recent one you did not win. How did that last game against DC impact the way you are feeling about tonight's game and the opportunity that's in front of you?
Yeah, I don't know if it's impacting our chances for tonight in my eyes. It's very clear they're playing a good brand of frisbee right now. And they've definitely gotten better throughout the year. They're trying to figure out, similar to us, they're trying to figure out where some of these new pieces go and what their identity is. It seems like they've done a good job throughout the season of growing. We were missing a lot of players in our last game, so I think it's going to be a really fun test because it feels like both teams are at full strength for this game. So it'll be a good preview of what's to come maybe down the road in the playoffs.
Yeah, it looks like you guys got, most of your top players available tonight, which is funny because that hasn't been the case the last few games, and yet y'all have been rolling. You crushed Salt Lake, you crushed Minnesota. What has enabled you to be so successful while missing key pieces like, Marquez against Minnesota and John Randolph each of the past 2 games?
Yeah, I think, it was, sorry, we're getting the storm. Let me get out of the storm real quick. Yeah, it's no secret. We obviously lost a lot of our top players going into the beginning of the season. So it was always going to be a little bit of a learning period of, what our new identity is, what we look like as a team without those players. So I think it's been, we knew we weren't in trouble at the beginning of the season. We knew we were going to figure it out. By the end, we just had to sort of keep at it. And I think we've done a good job of doing that. And yeah, it's nice that we finally have all the pieces together now going into this postseason. It feels like we've really got good momentum going to the playoffs, and we're kind of exactly where we want to be, in my opinion.
Jack, just logistically, how deep into your warm-up were you, and have you been given any indication of what the status is with the weather that's in the area?
Yeah, I think we were about 20 minutes into warm-up, 30 minutes into warm-up. I know DC was actually running a little bit late, so it kind of works out for them. Feels like, I don't know, it seems like a pretty quick storm. It feels like it'll blow over in the next 15, 20 minutes. But yeah, we were just getting the warm-up started, starting to toss the disc around a little bit. But it's good. No advantage now. DC has no excuse. We'll both be on the same page by the time the game gets rolling.
I know you are very familiar with the guys on the Breeze. It's not like you need to really study the scouting report before the game. You've played them so many times. I know you're friends with a bunch of guys on that team. What is the dynamic like on the field with you in DC? How friendly is it? How intense is it?
I would say it's relatively intense. It's definitely friendly in the locker rooms. You say hey to people, but I'd say on the field, both sides. I think it's fair to say it's a rivalry at this point. We've gotten the better half of that rivalry for the past few years, but yeah, you can feel that both sides really want to beat each other on the field. There's no friends out there, but everyone's cordial before and after the game. But both sides as competitive as it gets.
Jack, I don't know if I've ever asked you about the nickname that I believe I coined, Playoff Jack. I think I came up with it a couple of years ago, the night that you threw the game winner to Ben on his 30th birthday. Do you feel like your intensity or focus changes in the late season or playoff games compared to where it is the rest of the year?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, I would be shocked if that's not the case for everyone. I mean, it's just there's a lot more on the line, and the game really, it's a do or die. You lose and you're out. So there's definitely a change in mentality and intensity that you're going into a playoff game as opposed to a regular season. So I'm assuming that's the case for everyone. But yeah, the nerves are on an extra level, and the adrenaline's pumping, and I think that those things definitely help my game, and they always have. And so yeah, I love those games when you're really feeling something, you're really nervous, you really don't want to mess up, you really want to perform, and so. But I'm assuming that's the case for everyone out there.
Good deal. There's one specific play that I wanted to ask you about. You threw an assist last year, championship weekend, with a little shimmy and then the layout forehand, and then you did the same thing last Friday night in Minnesota. What's going through your mind as you prepare for that shimmy and the layout, giving up everything, you're losing your pivot foot, the disc is being released, flick. Can you take me through your mindset on that type of play?
Yeah, I mean, I think I get the disc and then I see that the window's there, so I'm just praying someone cuts to it because I know that I have that throw. I can fit that throw into that window. So all I'm looking for is someone to cut with position into that window. And yeah, I mean, I have no worries of giving up my pivot foot laying out because I know I'm throwing it. All I'm waiting for is for someone to make the first step, and it's getting put there. So yeah, it's a throw that I've sort of gotten really comfortable with throughout my career, and it's one of my favorite throws. So I think people downfield know when I'm looking like, please cut there. I give a little bit of eyes, and if someone makes a move, I feel pretty comfortable putting them in that space.
Good deal. Before we let you go, Jack, what are the keys to the game tonight from your perspective for the Empire to get a win against the Breeze?
It's always the keys for our team. It's defense coming out rolling, coming out intense, being the best defense in the league like they have been for the past however many years. Our defense has gotten on a roll recently, kind of found their swag a little bit, and I think it's going to be more of the same tonight. But yeah, it's all about our defense. Always has been. That's why we're 3-time champs, best defense in the league, however many years running. So it's going to be more of the same.
All right, Jack. We let you give a little thumbs down toward Bryce. I'm curious if you have a message to give to your old coach, Mike Dardis, who's about to join us to talk about the Carolina-Atlanta game. You have any thoughts on the Flyers and the hustle coming up?
Flyers are watch, man. It's a new era. It's Atlanta's time. I'm excited to see it. No, it's going to be a really good game. Obviously two incredibly talented teams. I actually don't know. I would put it as a pick 'em, honestly. Atlanta kicked our butts At the beginning of the season, they're kind of down. It feels like their time. Brett Holzmeyer's kind of coming into his own, maybe being the best player in the league this year. So, but Flyers are the Flyers. They got all the depth in the world, and so I'm excited to watch that game after it finishes up.
Awesome. Jack, thanks so much for doing this. Best of luck getting on the field and taking care of business tonight. We'll see you in the playoffs.
Thanks, love you, Mike. See you guys.
All right, we go from Hartford, Connecticut to Atlanta, Georgia. Mike Dardis, the head coach of the Carolina Flyers since the team's inception. Mike, thanks for being with us. What's the vibe down in Atlanta right now?
It's pretty good, man. We came in early, late yesterday, so we had a full day here. Usually we drive up the same day, but we wanted to give our players a little bit of time to themselves during the day, and I think the vibes were really good today. And we got a couple meetings in and did a lot of pregame stuff we generally don't have time to do until before the game. So, I think it's we're in a good headspace for sure.
Your team got off to such a great start this season after an inarguably disappointing finish last year. Couple bumps in the road, obviously the loss to Atlanta, the clunker against DC. Where do you feel your team is right now? Do you feel like things are ready to click and ascend and make a run?
Yeah, I mean, I think like every season you have ups and downs, and even our championship season, we lost 4 games. I mean, granted, those were like 1-goal games, so we didn't get the 2 blowouts we've kind of had. But I think there were some external factors that weighed in on those games that weren't like, strategy related. But I think we've learned a lot from it and grown a lot from it, and definitely grown a lot from our last matchup. And I think we'll have a lot of kind of tactics and strategy that we add because of how well Atlanta played us last game. So I think it's been a benefit. I think some of the beauty of us playing each other 4 times is we get to know each other really well. Those first 2 games, it was a little bit of like, mixed rosters, but this last game, we got to see like kind of full strength, which didn't go our way. But I think because of the tactics we saw them deploy and because of the ways we can adjust and grow from them, I think it'll be a good, definitely a better game today.
Obviously, you've taken your team into some pretty good hostile environments through the years, but in the South Division, Atlanta's crowd, maybe the rowdiest of anyone's. What's it like preparing your team to handle the emotions of that?
I think it's always easier when you're playing at home, and certainly our rivalry the last couple of years puts that on display. But I think the crowd isn't so overwhelming that we can't hear each other communicate. We can't be our own kind of sideline. And, I think you just have to mentally be ready for kind of the downside of, what happens when they have a crowd at their back and they make a big play and, the excitement's really high. You can't let that completely deflate you. So I think historically we haven't had that issue. So I'm not really anticipating it this game either.
Obviously, you got to the top of the mountain 3 years ago. You mentioned you lost 4 times that year. How would you compare this year's team to that team? Obviously, there were perhaps a few more veterans on that team. You had some scar tissue from losses previous years. But what about this team, if anything, reminds you of that championship team that won it all in DC 3 years ago?
I think just our resolve and the way we can adapt and be able to, take losses and take wins and grow from them. So, I think it takes time to mold your team into that championship level team. So that's what we're both similar in, right? 2021. And even here, we're young and we're, obviously a younger team, but those kids all have tons of experience from the past. So I think just being malleable.
In a few minutes, we'll be joined by the head coach of the Atlanta Hustle, Tuba Benson Jaa.
Right now.
Is he right next to you? There he is. I mean, can you tell us about the beginning of your guys' relationship when you first met him? I know he's told me how he was, maybe you can fact check this. He has said that he was one of the biggest proponents as a player late in his career, bringing you on to coach him. Because he said he needed a coach late in his playing career, and you got to coach him before you guys now go head to head.
Yeah, I mean, I was more of an advisor when I started, but I think through that experience, I got to know all the ring guys, especially, and I knew them from playing against them and I was on a team that had like pretty heated rivalry with them for a little bit. And I mean, I've always respected Tuba, and we've always had a pretty good relationship, even though we've coached opposite teams. And obviously that could be some animosity during those times. But I mean, I love Tuba as a player. Even when I was a player, like way, way long ago, I mean, I used to love watching Tuba make big plays, but it's been cool. I mean, I love the fact that our relationship is molded into this. And, I think we have a mutual respect for each other and it's been great, like doing, battling with someone you really respect opposed to somebody you just don't like, don't want to see all the time. So, and it's like, I think no matter who wins, the other person's going to cheer for at the end of the day. So.
Love it. Obviously the hustle offense have a lot of scary players. Obviously you have made a reputation as a defensive mastermind. Between Bobby and Austin and Brett and Langdon and all the different weapons that they have, what in your opinion has made the hustle offense go this year, and what are the biggest things that you're looking to try to slow them down with tonight?
I think they've grown as a team with their consistency. I think historically they've always had amazing playmakers, right? Like Matt's played since basically the beginning, and Matt Smith and some of these other players. So I think like just the fact that they've learned to be a little more calmer of a team, a little more consistent of a team, not relying on hucks only. And it's been a lot harder to dispossess them. And that makes them a really powerful team because they're always going to bring the energy. They're always going to have really hard defense, really like hard nose, grind out defense. And then they mix in zone sometimes they don't. I think like the consistency is the big thing. They've learned to like possess the disc along with their deep game. That's made them very, very powerful.
Their defense has also stepped up their game this year. What are the primary messages to your O-line tonight in terms of taking care of possession and punching in the holds that you need to get your D-line back on the field?
Yeah, just do easy things right. Be consistent. Like the games we've played really poorly in the last, 4 or 5, I think we've just not thrown completions or not handled the disc in the way we know how. And if we do that, we can beat any team in the league. And just we had some hiccup games, and we just want to get back on track and do the right things and the simple things. And it's not super hard for our team to do that, our offense to do that, because we have so many skilled weapons. It's just be consistent in what you do, and you'll be good to go.
Good stuff, Mike. We'll leave it there. Hope you have fun tonight down in Atlanta with a great matchup. Looking forward to watching it. Best of luck, and look forward to seeing you in the playoffs. I think I'll either see you at Durham Memorial Stadium either next weekend or 3 weeks from now. It's really up to you to determine when that's going to be.
Yeah, hopefully we see you later rather than sooner.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Good luck tonight.
Thanks, Evan.
We're gonna transition from one head coach at Silverbacks Park to another, as Tuba, Benson, Jaa always got the pregame swag going, and we'll welcome in the coach of the Hustle. Tuba, what are the vibes like at Silverbacks Park right now? A little under 2 hours away from opening pull.
Hey, what's up, Evan? First of all, just thanks for having me on. I love listening to Mike subtly talk trash across the airways in the way that he did. The vibes are real chill and mellow. I think most of the teams, like our guys, are inside the locker room right now, so they have time with their coaches and their lines, kind of just making sure that everybody is present-minded, in tune with what we have going on today. I think for a lot of the guys, because they have busy weeks, our main goal is making sure within the next several hours that we just get them here mentally. So that's what they're doing right now. They're having like final assignments, just having some talk time. Everybody gets to speak inside their lines, and really just kind of just make sure mentally that they're ready for the game.
I know you spent a lot of time thinking about the right mentality and preaching to your team. Who are some of the people early in your playing career or ultimate coaching career even that helped get you in the right frame of mind to be at your best, and how have you used those lessons at this stage in your coaching career?
Yeah, so I would say like in the ultimate world, a lot of times it was teammates, right? I had teammates like Dave Snoke and Jared Inselman who played really well under pressure and seemed to play consistent no matter what. And that's something I leaned towards because I was more, especially on the D line, I was like a fiery a player, right? So learning later into my later years how to kind of calm that and be very consistent. Before Ultimate, and even some, I had, coaches who helped me, with, playing soccer, running track, with just being able to kind of control some of the mental stuff. And then honestly, I think some of it came from just, things I learned from outside of Ultimate and bringing them into the Ultimate world. So that's whether it's other sports or business, and bringing some of those mindset books, movies, like podcasts, articles, and bringing that into, what we do here with the UFA.
As far as tonight's game goes, the Atlanta Hustle have certainly had this one on the calendar. You've known exactly what it could mean for a long time. What's it been like getting your team ready for this game, both physically and mentally?
Honestly, I think they're ready, right? Like, as far as, I think we've been just having in the mentality of just only focusing on the game at hand. So last week we had a lot tougher game against Dallas than what we were expecting. They literally probably played one of the best games of as a franchise, right? I think they played a really great game. We knew that any team that we're playing is going to bring it, and so we're expecting the same from Carolina. We always match up well against them. They had the first 2 games this season at home in Carolina. We're hoping to be able to even the match, right, with winning this one. And that way we're split even, gives us a home court advantage going into the playoffs. But I think my guys have always, whether it's from, the guys battling against UNC or NC State or UNCW, in college, to like club, or, Ring of Fire versus Chain, coming into the UFA, there's still some of those like rivalries that go beyond just the UFA that we're getting to see on the biggest stage of Ultimate, which is the UFA.
Well, the Hustle certainly have had 2 great seasons in a row. Last year ended in heartbreaking fashion, and it feels like there's a totally different mentality to this year's team. How do you think your team has handled the aftermath of what happened last year, and how has that made you better in 2024?
Well, we didn't all quit afterwards, so like that would probably be the initial emotion, which is like, let's go do something else, right? Like, because it was a pretty heartbreaking loss, even for myself. I remember thinking, because I had sudden death loss to Dardis, right, to Carolina and Dardis when I coached the Cannons, and I remember thinking this can't happen twice, and then it happens twice, and I think this one actually felt worse. But honestly, in that moment and in that game, I think I saw a lot of things that really inspired me to know that like the team was built to be able to handle whatever we did this season, to be at the place we are right now with the gauntlet of a season that we had, playing literally all of the best teams around the whole country, and to still be intact with a chance to be number 1 in the South, with lock into the playoff, with our guys probably with the most belief that they've had. I couldn't ask for more than a coach, right? I can only do so much, but the guys have responded. I'm really fortunate, Evan. I've got an amazing coaching staff around me, and I've got amazing players who put in the work right during the week, and then they get to come and show it off during on game day. So I'm excited to see what should be one of our better games, right, against Carolina. I know it's going to be a dogfight. I know that they're going to pull out everything. Dardis always seems to get better as the season goes on, and I think that we're looking forward to seeing how we match up against tonight's version of Carolina.
You could talk a lot about any of your players, but I'm curious who you feel on your team has really risen their game this year. Who has stepped up either offensively or defensively or both from either last year or where they were in the preseason to really lift the Hustle to what you said, being able to potentially finish first in the South despite the scheduling gauntlet you had?
I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but one of the guys would be this guy, right? You guys all know who he is, Brett Holzmeyer. First of all, if this guy doesn't win MVP for this year, it's a shame, right? Because he won't say, but I can say it as his coach, literally like the most dominant player in our league. Cannot be touched, all right? That is one, but it's not just like the play that y'all see on the field with Brett. A lot of like what I love about Brett is how he stepped up and been a leader this year. The huddles, what he's saying in the huddles, what he's saying behind the scenes is a bigger part of like why I'm excited to see him play on the field. Like y'all see the big plays that he makes, but Brett does a lot off the field that puts us in this position. So that's one that'd be like an easy one, right, for his play. But I love like just putting out what he does off the field, right? The conversations he's having, the growth as a player. And you see the growth on the field, but then you also see the growth in the way that he's interacting with his teammates. He happened to be walking by, so I thought, I know the fans, they don't want to see me, right? I know everybody out there wants to see him, so I just wanted to make sure he got a little bit of airtime.
Argument from me as to what we've seen so far for who the MVP of the league is. Now, we have always factored in postseason play in the MVP voting. That matters too. So it's not decided yet, but I think right now through week 12, he would be my first place MVP vote. Who else other than Brett? I know he was just walking by. I don't know who else is walking by, but even if they're in the locker room or on their way to the game, who do you feel has made a difference for you this year?
I think we just had a few players on the backside. Well, one, I think I said this at the early season. I've loved the return of Michael Fairley, right? Like, to me, this is the best season Fairley has ever had. You see him literally being a tear all over the field, offensively, defensively. When we need him on the offense, we bring him over. On defense, he's laying out, he's sacrificing his body. This year, fortunately, every time he lays out, he gets back up. In years past, we've had to deal with some injuries there. But then the bigger part for me that's made it so great for me is his mentality has been completely on our energy bus when it comes to the hustle bus. He is promoting everything we're doing behind the scenes. He is pumping up his teammates. He's always got a positive attitude. He says, Coach, whatever you need, I've got you. He's sending me encouraging texts, which I know if he's sending them to me, he's sending them to other people. That stuff is so infectious for a team. He has a belief that, like, we are going to win every point. We're going to win every single game. And so as a coach, I really appreciate and can really respect that. And then he goes on the field and he backs up every bit of trash talk, every bit of, like, you know, hey, pump you up, all that stuff. He backs it up on the field with one really tenacious play, but also really composed play, which is pretty awesome.
That's awesome. As you think about tonight and the Flyers and your fourth meeting with them and the stakes that are on the line, what are the biggest things offensively, defensively that you need to do against Carolina to get the Southern Division Championship game back in your house?
Say that last part. The last part of the question, it went out for a second. You say offensively or defensively?
Offensively and defensively. What do you need to do to get the South Championship game back in your house in 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think offensively, both is going to be just stick to the basics, right? I think if we can keep Carolina from getting in a rhythm, when Carolina gets hot, they are one of the hardest teams to get out of rhythm, right? And so our goal is to not allow them to get into full rhythm, you know, in the first and second quarter. So I think defensively, if we're able to do that, they still do have some young players. I know people love to highlight, you know, some of their players who have been making plays all season, but they're still young, right? And so my goal and our goal is to put some pressure on those players, get them to cough up the disc a little bit. If they don't cough it up in the first and second, get them to just be off rhythm, right? There are players, you know, like a Fairfax who the guy seems like he's never been off rhythm since I've ever known him, right? So he'll get his, right? And I think a few other players on their side will get theirs, but they have shown that they will give the disc up. And so our goal is to, like, not let them get in rhythm defensively. So just causing friction is what we call it. Cause friction, right? Throughout the whole game. And then I think offensively on our end, if our guys actually decide when they come into a game that they want to possess the disc, there aren't any defenders that can touch our guys, right? But I think it just is the mindset that our team comes into. So if they come in saying we're going to possess, we're going to be stingy with the disc, and we're going to use our legs, right? Like outwork the other team. We're going to make the right decisions. These are all the basic things, right? So I don't say that from a cocky place. I say it just really confidently that if they make that decision, then we're in a really good place. Now, if they don't, and we got to kind of work, you know, through some of those things, then it's going to be, I think, it's going to be a really tough game. But I think that's just the name of the game where we're going to need to make sure we just get in rhythm before they do. So our hope is that somewhere in the second, we can stabilize before they do. Use the crowd at times. Our crowd is loud. They don't like Carolina. They know our history. We're hoping they come out in large numbers. And we love playing at home, right? We have a really good home record during the season, and our goal is to hopefully keep that home court stand, and then, you know, go on to the playoffs and hopefully hold in that home court stand and just see what happens is what I say.
got me fired up, and I was already really fired up to watch this game on WatchUFA.tv tonight. Ideally, you would be at full strength. Unfortunately, you are not, like a lot of teams at this time of year, dealing with some injuries. Matt Smith is out, broke his collarbone a few weeks back. I know Justin and Lucas for your D-line. As far as I know, they were inactive last I saw.
Yeah, they're both out with injuries. Yep.
What's their status going forward? Two guys who I thought, different times this year, I thought, oh, Justin's going to be the defensive player of the year. And then I thought Lucas was going to be the defensive player of the year. So that just speaks to how good those guys have been.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate. I think I really realized about 2/3 through the season how deep we really were, right? Because I think, like you said, even in my mental stat line, it was like Justin's our top defender. And then you start looking at the actual numbers, and Lucas kind of was right there, right? And then eventually kind of surpassed him. And so we really have been able to adopt the mentality of next man up, right? And we've got guys who have been training to get out there and do their thing. But both Justin, Justin, Matt, and my brain just went blank. And Lucas, right? And Lucas are all going to be out for this game. Our hope is that for at least Lucas and Justin will be able to get them back sometime in the playoffs. And depending on how deep we go into the playoffs, there's a possibility of a Matt Smith sighting. So I think our main goal is just really focusing on the 20 we got on the field. We've been really fortunate that everybody that's on the field, even if they're players that aren't usually rostered, they've played in several games, including maybe even 2 or 3 times against Carolina already, right? So we've, I think, only been full strength, right? Against New York. That was our only game that we were truly full strength. And then since then, we have not, Justin didn't play in the last Carolina game. And I remember seeing them get kind of happy they want to get me on the field, but then we just had other players like a Frankie Hernandez and a few other players who stepped up and made Ds for us.
The depth of your team has been really impressive throughout the year. All right, final thought before we let you go and get ready, about 90 minutes plus until your opening pull. Do you know right now what the last thing you're going to say to your team before you take the field tonight is?
The last thing, I'm a little, I write down a few things where we go over like the 3Es or, energy efficiency, but I'm most likely going to just say, be yourself. Everything we've been doing up to this point has been working. I don't need them to be anything extra. I want them to focus on fundamentals, focus on techniques, focus on the basics. Those things have got us here. If you try to be a hero, we haven't needed a hero, right? We literally have had full team wins. And so for me, that would be probably what I'm going to say, right? I've been actually coaching myself through the whole season to utilize all the same things throughout the season. So when we get into the playoffs, I don't come up with like, I need heroes now, you know what I mean? Like, but we need just who we've been the whole season is who we need to be when we get to times like this, right? But we are looking at this as a pre-qualifier game. So we're looking at this as a playoff game. So I do want my guys to feel the emotional spike, right? But then to come out and perform the same way that we've been performing the whole season and to have fun. This is a blast. If you can't tell how I am right now, I'm literally watching some of the guys warm up. My kids are eating ices and they're on the field throwing with a few of the players too. Music's playing in the background. We're in Atlanta, which is one of the best cities in the US. I'm sweating because I decided to try to do the inchworm thing or whatever in front of Mike Dardis to make him laugh, but it looked like a beached whale, so it didn't really work. So I'm over here just sweating, and I'm talking to Evan Lepler, and we're talking pro ultimate. There's nothing better than this. People, do not leave your seats tonight. Literally, there's going to be some of the best ultimate tonight in all the games that are going on in the UFA.
Tuba, it is always an honor to chat with you. I'm glad you're saying that you can enjoy it and have fun, because I was thinking as you're talking, I'm so pumped for this game tonight. I'm an impartial observer. I hope you can appreciate just the entertainment factor and the high level that you're going to witness from the very front row on the sideline, because it's going to be quite the spectacle, and the best is still yet to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super pumped. I'm super chill right now. Obviously you'll probably see some different moments when you see the camera later. But I'm definitely always appreciative about just this experience that we're able to have. Like Dardis said earlier, some of us were playing the sport when some of these guys were literally not even born, right? And there was no cameras, there was no commentating, there was no it was nothing, right? So just to have this experience as a coach and watch these guys be able to play in front of their family and fans and all that stuff, yeah, there's nothing but gratitude. But we want that win, so we're coming. We're coming, so we want that win. Hopefully my boys are ready.
Thanks so much, my friend. Best of luck tonight. See you in the playoffs either way.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, man. Y'all have a fun night.
Get you in game day mode. We are closing in on the opening pull. Unfortunately, things are going to be delayed at the outset in Hartford, Connecticut, because DC and New York are going to be dealing with some thunderstorms that we saw with Jack. So that just means we're going to chat a little bit more pregame. We're actually going to be joined by Brian Jones here in a few minutes, who's going to be calling the New York DC game alongside Dan Hilton on Watch UFA TV. But before we get to Brian, stand by, because Adam Ruffner has his keys to the game for both DC, New York, and Atlanta, Carolina. We'll get Adam's keys, and then we'll get Brian's keys as we continue on a very special edition of Live with Lep. Here's Adam.
Hey, Frisbee fans. It's Adam Ruffner here, host of the Swing Pass podcast. I hope you're as hyped as I am for the final weekend of the 2024 UFA regular season and this absolutely action-packed Saturday night of matchups. I'm here to talk about the keys to the game for both the DC at New York showdown as well as Carolina at Atlanta. Let's get right into it. First up, let's look at the mega matchup in the East Division between the 9-2 DC Breeze and the 8-3 New York Empire. These two teams are arch rivals, and DC, for the first time in a couple seasons, actually got the better of the Empire earlier this season on June 8th, when DC edged out New York 16-14 at home. A big part of the Breeze's victory was their execution inside the red zone, and once again, that area of the field is going to be crucial for the visitors. For the Breeze tonight, I want to see them win the red zone. In that first meeting this season, DC out-executed the Empire by a margin of 12% inside the red zone. That was a big part of how they held on to their 2-goal lead. I think they're going to need a lot of opportunities in the short field again tonight. That'll give them a punching chance on the road against New York. The second big key for the DC Breeze is them establishing a deep game. It's no secret that the Breeze have lacked a little luster in engaging the Huck, both this season and in years past. They complete the second fewest deep balls in the entire association in 2024, but when DC does have good looks and they complete above a 50% rate on their deep attempts, they're 7-0 this season. So if they can find some purchase in the third level against the Empire defense, expect DC to be looking at another W against the reigning champs. And now for New York's keys to the game. First, their reliability through versatility. This New York offense has undergone numerous iterations and lineup changes over the last several weeks, and yet they've solidified into one of the best units in the entire UFA. For the 2024 season, the Empire ranked 3rd in offensive success rate, and it doesn't seem to matter who's around the disc, whether it's Jack Williams, Solomon Rushmeyer-Bailey, Elliott, or Oliver Chartok. You could take your pick. The Empire have gotten it done against any and all comers, and they continue to gain strength as they push towards another deep postseason run. The second big key for the Empire, and this will come as no surprise to Frisbee fans, they've got to bring the pressure. This New York team is on a 4-game winning streak, and that's thanks in large part to their big-time defense returning in force. The Empire had 37 break scores in just their last 3 games, but in their first meeting with DC, the Empire were just 2 of 9 on break opportunities. They've got to do better than that against a dominant DC offense. New York is 6-0 this season when they get 6 or more breaks in a game. That'll be a number to watch heading into tonight. And now let's turn to the South Division showdown between the 9-2 Carolina Flyers and the 9-2 Atlanta Hustle. First, the Carolina Flyers. They've got to avoid short field turnovers. those kinds of mistakes absolutely killed this team in their 2-game skid in the middle of the season. This is one of the most high-octane offenses, but if they can't get off the runway, then they aren't able to get downfield and initiate a lot of their scoring opportunities. The second big key for the Carolina Flyers is getting the disc to Jacob Fairfax. Fairfax has been absolutely on fire in his last 3 games playing at Atlanta, racking up receiving totals of 411, 533, and 555 receiving yards against a very strong hustle defense. We'll see if Fairfax can stay flying against Atlanta. And last but not least, the keys to the game for the Atlanta Hustle. First, they've got to continue their ability to frustrate and flummox Carolina's continuation game. In the first meeting between these two teams, Carolina took 19 deep attempts against the Hustle defense, but Atlanta was able to come away with 8 turnovers on huck looks. If they can force a similar volume from the Flyers tonight, then they'll maybe find themselves another W and hosting a second straight South Division championship game. The second big point for the Hustle, and this is sort of flipping the script, is that they've got to establish their own long ball. Atlanta, since the start of the 2021 season, has been the best hucking team in the entire association, but in their last 3 games, they've been a little bit more trim on their deep looks. Atlanta succeeds best when their offense is balanced and attacking from all positions on the field. Expect a big night from handlers Austin Taylor and Bobby Lay looking to connect on the deep ball. And that'll do it for the keys to the game. Can't wait to tune in alongside all of you tonight, and I'll kick it right on back over to Evan Lepler in the studio.
Thanks for that insight, Adam. And now we're getting ready for DC, New York. It was supposed to be a 6 o'clock start time, and Brian Jones is supposed to be working right now. But since there's a lightning delay, we're going to put Brian to work as we're seeing him upside down.
Let's see if we can get this right. I don't know what's going on here, Evan. Yeah, that's Lepler. We're live here. I'm Charlie Eisenhardt's coming in the room. He's doing producer tonight. Charlie, what's your take for tonight?
It's a big game, baby. It's a big game.
All right. How's it going, Evan?
Set the scene for me, Brian. What's it like right now at Trinity Health Stadium amidst the monsoon, I guess?
Yeah, that's right. We could see the dark clouds coming in, and I mean, it didn't disappoint. A couple lightning strikes, but it looks like the worst is over. You can kind of see the rain trickling in, but everybody vacated the field, and I think it's even helpful because the story was that DC came a little bit late fighting some traffic. So I think this is a good reset that's going to benefit the Breeze. They're always looking for those little advantages. You know that as a commentator and, me as a coach, we're always looking for those little edges.
Jack told us earlier tonight that with DC perhaps arriving a little bit late, he's glad that there's this delay now because now DC will have no excuses whatsoever. You've been a part of this rivalry as a coach, as a broadcaster, in both the club and professional levels. What to you speaks to New York versus DC and Ultimate these past few years, and what goes through your mind on the verge of a big game like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's 2 competing philosophies in Ultimate. Big ball for New York has been the way of the law of the land for a few years and more. And for DC, they found ways to innovate and really bring in small ball. I think the advantage this year, though, is starting to trend towards DC because the trump card for New York was always the end of quarter situations. I mean, there were games where DC would be able to have a better performance overall, except for the end of quarters. And so, with the offseason moves, they still have Benyat in New York, but that's, I think, the key here. It was always the trump card for New York in these really tight moments. They could always get away with winning the end of quarters.
Yeah, New York is looking as good as they have looked all season long these past few weeks. They dominated Salt Lake. They dominated Minnesota. And it was the way that they did it, with different young players stepping up. Obviously, the stars that were available continued to play stars. What have you noticed about how New York has evolved this year without Jeff Babbitt, without Ryan Osgar, without some of the other veterans like Ben Katz who stepped away from last year? How has New York evolved in this third year of what could potentially be 3 straight championships.
Well, they've always had the talent, and having those exits are pretty big. And you saw it, I think, in that first game where they lost against Atlanta. And they've made some changes there and put some people in different configurations, which I think has helped. And just they've been cruising the last few weeks. The biggest thing that was the difference in the last game against the DC Breeze was they couldn't convert on their turnovers and they couldn't get turnovers late. DC was able to squeak that one out. And so it's a really good sign for the New York team to get that performance out of their depth, especially on O-line, which really translates to their D-line. And tonight's a big one because they got to win by 3 to get a home game next week. So I wouldn't be surprised. You know, we saw in 2019, Jack Williams pull out, or 2021, Jack Williams pull out this huge, 30-point performance. And I wonder if we're going to see that tonight. A lot of crossover for New York and a lot of players playing both ways to try to get that 3-point victory in a home game.
Coaching, how all out would you go for this game tonight, knowing that you could play DC next week?
Yeah, I think it's a real possibility, but I think it's more important and it's just simpler to just try and win. You could try to play mind games with it. You could try to hide something, and there's certainly some value with that, but it's a lot easier to sleep at night when you come away with a victory, possibly a home game, and you have the confidence that you can go and take that team. This is a new New York team, and I don't think no matter what happens tonight, they're going to lack confidence, but it's still better to win this game, feel like you know what you need to do, make some more changes after that. But it doesn't mean anything's guaranteed after that, but it's just simple. Just win, baby.
The late-breaking news with the Breeze, aside from their traffic delays from a roster standpoint, was Cole Jurek was inactivated due to an illness. How does that impact things for the Breeze? Because he's been really good for them.
Yeah, I mean, he's somebody that has just grown over the last few years. He started out as just this athletic playmaker and has become this well-rounded player that can huck and do a lot of things. But importantly for them, with the offseason loss of Oxley, he's somebody that can help them get easy scores, especially against the athleticism that New York brings. And I think that's a big loss. You got to find ways to score easy in this league. You don't want to take too many passes to do it. It can really tire you out, especially in the second half. And Cole Jurek's a big loss because he helps you do that, just make those scores easy and keeps those throw counts down.
I know you're getting ready to call the game, and I don't necessarily want to ask you to make a prediction, but let me ask you, which way are you leaning tonight? Do you have a lean one way or another as to who has the edge? This is just New York's second ever game in the stadium, so it feels a little bit more like a neutral site game than a home game. That has to be a small factor, right?
Yeah, it certainly is, but I'm still leaning New York. I think that they've learned the lessons from the last outing. They've been playing well. They're really motivated. I think that DC coming, while it feels like a neutral site game, DC's coming from a long way away. It's still going to feel like a road game for them. And so New York, I think, is going to have the edge and be ready for it. And last time they went 2 for 9 on break chances. I think they're going to do a little bit better. They've just been playing well over the last few weeks, and I think you got to ride the hot hand.
Before we let you go, Atlanta hosting Carolina tonight with the South Division on the line. What do you view as the keys in that matchup? Do you feel like Atlanta is ready to, take that next step? They've never been a championship weekend before. Is this the hustle team that has the pieces to do it? And obviously the Flyers are not going to go quietly. They're experienced and talented and invigorated to try to bounce back from a disappointing finish to last year as well.
Yeah, I think this is a really important game for Atlanta because they have been so close to victory over the last 5 years and had so many moments snatched away from them. And I think that's going to be on their minds. I really love the mindset when I saw the tail end of the interview with Coach Jaa and Jaa talking about, hey, we don't need to be heroes. And that's really the mindset they should be in is just take the easy pass, focus on the fundamentals. You don't have to do anything different to win. And that's, I think, the sign of like a team, if they can really hear that message. And because you saw that with New York, their rivals that they would never beat used to be the Toronto Rush. Toronto Rush ruled the East. And it took this kind of like sea change and this mental change to be like, they're just ultimate players just like we are. For Atlanta, they've got to feel that and really take that to heart. If they can go out and play their best game. I mean, we saw it at the beginning of the year against New York. I said it then. They looked like a championship team. And this is a big one for them tonight to prove that to themselves.
Great news About when we might see Ultimate between the Breeze and Empire tonight?
Yeah, I think we're looking at about a half an hour time frame. I think we should expect seeing players get on the field soon and warm up. And yeah, me and Dan Hilton will be calling the game and getting our pregame ready. So we'll have to do the pre-roll live, but
Live TV. Brian, this was spontaneous, but thank you for jumping on with us to share some thoughts. Looking forward to listening to you and Dan tonight. Have a great call, and I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Sounds good. See you, Evan.
Brian Jones, coach in this league, coach of the year back in 2019 when he led the Empire to the title, and obviously a longtime broadcaster, colleague of mine as well. Appreciate Brian joining us. And the plan was to lead right into the start of the DC-New York game. Unfortunately, weather has intervened. I'm told they're looking at a opening pull time somewhere around 6:45, 6:55, hopefully, although that could be pushed back due to the lightning strike. So things are getting a little busier on watchufa.tv. But hey, let me just speak to you straight. If you are not a subscriber to watchufa.tv, but you're watching this show, please subscribe to watchufa.tv. Just for this month, if that's going to be it, because with the games that are coming up tonight, the playoff games that are ahead, it's $11.99 a month. It is really a fantastic investment to watch some of the best Ultimate Frisbee in the world. And obviously the Ultimate Frisbee Association, say what you want about the league, but right now it is as wide open as it has ever been. Any of, I'd say 5 or 6 teams could win the title, but technically there are 12 teams that are still alive. And we do know who the 12 playoff teams are, know what the seedings are going to be and what the home field advantage is going to be. And obviously that is going to be very, very important as we head down the stretch. The playoff bracket right now, the Central is set. Bottom right of your screen, Chicago's at Madison. That's going to be next Sunday, July 28th. And then 13 days after that, on that Saturday, 3 weeks from now, the Wind Chill will host either the Radicals or the Union. The West Division, bottom left, is almost set. I mean, if Seattle loses to Portland by a lot and Oakland beats both LA and San Diego by a ton, it's possible the Spiders could overtake the Cascades, but realistically, that's not going to happen. So that's basically a done deal. Very likely it'll be Oakland at Seattle next weekend with a winner going to Salt Lake. But as you see in the top left, right now DC is number 1. It could be Boston. It could be New York that takes the top spot. Obviously, the Carolina Flyers currently number 1, but they need to win tonight in Atlanta when they get going at 7:30. We'll see if the Hustle can snatch the top seed and home field in the South for the second consecutive season. Didn't work out so well at the end last year for Atlanta. The Hustle have been on something of a revenge tour all season long, and we'll see if they can get over the hump and go to championship weekend. You know, it's interesting. The Shred and the Wind Chill, number 1 seeds in their respective divisions, they're both returners from championship weekend from last year, obviously. They both played that thrilling game that went down to the wire and went to overtime. It's the second overtime game in championship weekend history between the Shred and the Wind Chill. If the Hustle and the Breeze can get the 1 seeds in their division, those are 2 teams that in their histories have never before been to championship weekend. So that's a hurdle for both of those franchises that obviously feel they are championship caliber to try and jump over, because that is what it is all about this time of year. We are not going to be leading directly into Ultimate, but there is plenty of Ultimate over the course of the evening on UFA.TV, watchufa.tv. Earlier today, of course, we saw the Philadelphia Phoenix win the Commonwealth Cup. Boston and Toronto, that's getting started at the top of the 7 o'clock hour. Hopefully DC, New York gets rolling before then as well. And obviously the 2 big games, DC, New York, and Carolina, Atlanta. But we got to keep track of Boston and their point differential. The adjusted divisional point differential could be the deciding factor in the East. It gets pretty hairy, pretty complicated, but I've been cracking down the numbers. And basically right now DC has a slight advantage. If DC can win tonight, they're going to be in pretty good shape unless Boston can really put up a big margin at Toronto and at Montreal. And look, the Glory do not have their best team on the road. They've got a solid team. They've got a team that I think will win, but I'm not sure it's a team that's going to win by the excessive margin that they're going to need to overtake DC if the Breeze lose, then Boston just needs to win, and the margin doesn't matter. But if the Breeze lose and the Empire win and then the Glory drop a game, it's possible every team could finish with the exact same number of losses, and well, then things get pretty interesting. I'm told on the spot I can offer a watchufa.tv discount. If you are not a subscriber right now and you want to be one, and this is totally spontaneous off the cuff, I just got the message, 50% off for the first month using the promo UFA24. UFA24 is the promo code. If you're not a subscriber now, become a subscriber. 50% off for the first month. Watch DC New York tonight. Watch Carolina Atlanta tonight. Watch all 11 playoff games that are coming up over the course of the next 5 weeks, all leading the road to championship weekend in Salt Lake City, August 23rd and 24th. We've been on the air for 75 minutes. It has been fantastic. It's really a fun night to chat Ultimate with Tim DeBile, the coach of the Radicals, Bryce Merrill, the coach of the Shred, Jack Williams, championship weekend MVP and a star for the Empire, and of course, Mike Dardis with the Flyers, Tuba Benson Jaa with the Atlanta Hustle, Brian Jones, our spontaneous guest. Also appreciate Adam Ruffner chiming in with his keys to the game tonight. And truly the biggest thank you goes out to Luke Johnson for orchestrating all of the behind-the-scenes technology and making us go. Hey, Luke. He told me he wasn't going to put himself on the air, so I take it all back, Luke. You're a liar and a thief and a fool. Love you, Luke. Great night of Ultimate still to come. Thank you for watching Live with Lep, special Game Day Live edition. Can't wait to see how the playoff bracket looks at the end of the weekend and set the schedule for the road to championship weekend. My name's Evan Lepler. You knew that already. Appreciate you tuning in. Enjoy the Ultimate. See you in the playoffs. Good night, everybody.